The costumes, the hair. There's only one ABBA. And after decades of going their own way, the Swedish supergroup is back.
At 78, Benny Andersson finally shares the real story behind ABBA. It's more than music and fame. It's about the pain, the escape, and the personal struggles that shaped their iconic sound. Benny reveals the hidden truths we've long sensed, but never truly heard before. Stay tuned as he opens up about the deeper emotions and experiences that fueled one of the world's most legendary bands. The architect of sound before ABBA became the global music machine it is today. Benny Andersson was just a boy, the architect of sound, fascinated by melodies, not fame. He grew up surrounded by classical and folk music, learning structure and emotion long before he touched a synthesizer. While the world would later sing along to Dancing Queen, Benny was shaped by the Swedish accordion and church harmonies. These early roots gave him a steady musical compass, even as ABBA chased disco lights. His sound came from a deeper place, not trends, but timeless layers. Benny's work with Bjorn Ulvaeus created a balance most bands never find. Benny crafted the chords, the tension, the feeling, while Bjorn handled the lyrics and story. Together, they built songs that felt simple but hid emotional weight under every beat. Benny didn't just write music, he sculpted it. This process made ABBA songs feel alive, even decades later. In the studio, Benny was relentless. He would spend entire days adjusting a single harmony or note. He chased a feeling more than a sound, working until the track matched the emotion in his mind. There are stories of Benny replaying sections again and again, not for perfection, but for honesty. Every song was a message, even if listeners didn't always hear the full meaning. While Agnetha and Frida stood in the spotlight, Benny often watched from the background. He once admitted he never truly felt seen in ABBA, not as a star, but as a craftsman. Fans screamed for the singers, but few noticed the man arranging every string, every echo. Behind the glass of the control room, Benny carried the pressure to make everything work. He wasn't the face of ABBA, but he was always the core. He was also the fixer, the one expected to hold the band together. When creative tensions rose, Benny often stepped in to smooth things out. He managed not just the music, but the emotions behind it. That role wore him down quietly. Over time, being the group's glue became a silent burden he rarely talked about. Most don't realize how much Benny shaped ABBA's identity. Without him, the band might have sounded bright but hollow. His chord progressions brought sadness into joyful melodies, creating a contrast people couldn't explain but always felt. Even the happiest ABBA songs had shadows underneath, and that was Benny's doing. He gave their music depth without drawing attention to himself. He also pushed technology in the studio. Benny wasn't afraid to use early synthesizers and multitrack recordings to expand their sound. While other bands stuck to simple formulas, ABBA used layers of instruments and effects that felt rich and cinematic. Benny didn't settle for what was popular. He built soundscapes that told stories on their own. His studio work laid the groundwork for modern pop production. What sets Benny apart is how he turned silence into part of the sound. He knew when to hold back, when to let a melody breathe. That control made ABBA's songs feel more human. He wasn't showing off. He was building trust with the listener, guiding them through highs and lows. This skill can't be taught, and it's why their music still holds up today. In a recent interview, Benny revealed a surprising truth. He said he used music to process feelings he couldn't express in real life. While others in the group dealt with emotions directly, he let the piano do the talking. That means many of ABBA's saddest, most beautiful songs were Benny's way of avoiding confrontation. He wasn't hiding, but he wasn't fully present either. This idea changes how we understand ABBA. Behind the group's perfect image was a man struggling with connection. Benny wasn't distant because he didn't care. He was distant because music gave him a safer place to feel. Every track was both creation and escape. It was how he held himself together while everything else pulled apart. Now, at 78, Benny looks back and sees the pattern. He knows he didn't chase fame. He chased the feeling of a perfect note, a clean resolution. And while ABBA became a worldwide phenomenon, he often felt like a stranger inside it. The applause didn't fill the gap, but the music still does. The truth behind ABBA's success wasn't just music. It was hidden rivalry, ego, and a deeper frustration. No one saw Love Hurts and Harmony. When Love Hurts and Harmony, Benny and Frida's relationship didn't begin with fireworks. It began with music. Late nights in the studio blurred the lines between work and something deeper. Their connection formed not over candlelit dinners, but through melodies that revealed pieces of themselves. Music gave them a shared language. When words fell short, it was less about romance, more about recognition. Two people finding safety in sound. Frida brought an open heart and raw energy into every session. Benny, in contrast, was quiet and internal, more comfortable behind a piano than in a serious conversation. Their differences made the music better, but they made the relationship harder. Frida felt emotions loudly. Benny processed them in silence. What worked creatively didn't always translate at home. At the heart of their bond was trauma. Frida's early life was marked by abandonment and fear, while Benny had learned to bottle things up since childhood. Neither knew how to fully open up, so they used songs to talk without talking. Lyrics became their therapy room, but instead of healing, it created distance. In interviews, Benny has admitted he was more emotionally available in the studio than in real life. He poured his feelings into lyrics and chords, then shut down when the music stopped. Frida needed someone present outside the booth, someone who could feel without composing. Benny wasn't that person, and he since acknowledged it. He says music was his shield, not his solution. Songs like The Winner Takes It All and One of Us weren't just breakup ballads. They were messages wrapped in sound. Benny now admits he wrote those songs not to express regret, but to avoid talking about it. The music gave him control, while real-life emotions felt too messy to handle. He's confessed guilt over that. Writing pain was easier than owning it. Frida, on the other hand, lived every lyric. She sang with the full weight of their tension and heartbreak. For her, those songs weren't abstract, they were personal. But Benny stayed behind the curtain, letting the music do the talking while avoiding the hard conversations. This imbalance eventually cracked the foundation of their relationship. They loved differently. Frida needed warmth and response. Benny needed space and silence. These needs clashed constantly, even as their music grew more powerful. Their bond survived longer in the studio than it ever could at home. What sounded like chemistry was often just well-produced distance. The public saw glamour and success, but inside the group, things were falling apart. Benny wasn't unfaithful in the way headlines claimed. His failure wasn't betrayal, it was detachment. He could write a haunting melody, but struggled to hold a real conversation about feelings. Over time, that emotional gap became impossible to cross. One of Benny's recent admissions adds a new layer. He said, "I gave my best lines to songs, not to the people who needed to hear them from me." That quiet confession changes the whole story. It wasn't about who was right or wrong. It was about how Benny used music to dodge vulnerability. He wasn't cruel. He was scared. Facing emotions directly felt too risky. So he built musical walls instead. The result was songs that moved the world, but failed the people closest to him. That's the hidden cost of genius. Looking back, Benny doesn't blame Frida. He understands now that she asked for connection, and he gave her art. He now sees that the same music that brought them together also kept them apart. His greatest gift was also his greatest flaw. He could make people feel, but he struggled to feel with them. This chapter isn't about blame, it's about insight. It's about seeing Benny not as the quiet one in the background, but as someone who hid behind harmony. While others fought or cried, he composed. And in doing so, he missed chances to really show up for the people who mattered most. At 78, Benny has started unpacking this part of his past. He sees now that silence, even in the form of music, can be just as harmful as anger or distance. He's not rewriting history. He's revealing the part that was always there, just beneath the melody. For the first time, we're hearing the full story. And it doesn't come with a chorus. The silent rivalry, you never heard the silent rivalry. The world loved to talk about ABBA's female rivalry. Fans argued over who was the better singer, who wore the better outfits, and who had more drama. But the real, unspoken tension had nothing to do with Agnetha or Frida. It was Benny silently competing, not with a person, but with fame itself. He wasn't chasing applause, but recognition for something deeper than what the world saw. In every photo shoot and headline, the spotlight leaned toward the women. Their beauty, fashion, and personal lives drew the cameras. Meanwhile, Benny and Bjorn were quietly labeled the men behind the music. No matter how many songs they wrote or hits they produced, they weren't the face of the brand. For Benny, this wasn't just about credit. It was about being seen for who he really was. Benny wasn't a background figure. He was the architect of their entire sound. He spent long hours layering harmonies, crafting chords, and making the melodies that stuck in people's heads for decades. But when awards rolled in or magazines featured the group, his name barely made the footnotes. He wasn't angry at the women. He was hurt by how the world ignored the real work behind the shine. He created the emotion, but others got the spotlight. Benny has said he was often cast as the cold brain of ABBA. It made him sound like a machine, smart but distant, technical but not emotional. Yet the truth was the opposite. He was pouring his soul into those songs. He wasn't just programming music. He was expressing pain, love, and longing through every chord. This mislabeling followed him for years. Critics and fans treated ABBA's songs as catchy pop without depth. But behind that simplicity was Benny's heartbreak, disappointment,